Hey there, how you doing? It's Michael Montgomery, broker with Renzo Real Estate here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and let's jump in to your monthly market update. So today we are discussing what's happened in the Calgary market over the month of September in 2018. We're going to look at a few different things. We're going to look at some trends, we're going to look at some different product types, and we're going to analyze it to see how that impacts you if you're selling or if you're buying. Now, I wish I had some better news, and every single month it seems to be the same thing. We just seem to have this decrease and this decrease and this decrease. And there never seems to be some positive news coming out. And there are a couple of signs that there could be some turnaround happening, but this could not be felt for quite some time. So let's look at what we're seeing. Decreased number of sales. Of course, we have seen decreased number of sales. Inventory continues to rise, but it's not risen as quickly. But we still have the decreased number of sales. So what does this mean? This means that people aren't buying the properties in Calgary. And why? The Calgary Real Estate Board thinks that a lot of it has to do with unemployment, which they said rose one more time last month, high lending rates or increasing lending rates, and then consumer confidence. We want to pay a little bit of attention to consumer confidence here because this is one of these things that can be overlooked, and it's hard to really put a number or grasp on consumer confidence because it's more of just a feeling, right? But consumer confidence is really felt when you have, say, a seller, and a seller would like to sell their property and then move to the next property. However, they're not seeing showings, they're not getting the price that they require on their home in order to move to the next property. They're not getting the buyers to come into their property to then move into the next property. So this is causing this angst and this negativity in the seller's world for the most part. Throughout most communities, we're starting to feel this, right? If we're not starting to, we've already felt it for some time, but we're starting to feel it even more so. So if you're selling in these communities and you're trying to move up throughout Calgary, chances are you're feeling a little frustration and you're in the same boat as many other people. And then because of that, you're not able to get to the next thing, and the next person's not able to get to the next one. And it all kind of comes back down this domino effect to who's coming into Calgary. And even if there is positive net migration, that doesn't necessarily mean that the people that are moving to Calgary are jumping into the real estate market. In fact, we're seeing a lot of people go into the rental market. So the rental market is showing some signs of positive turnaround, and that can be seen by people that are actually choosing to rent versus buy. So in Calgary, oftentimes when people would move here, they'd want to jump into this exciting, fast real estate market. Now, because things are slower, it's causing this feeling inside of people that consumer confidence is decreasing. They're then not jumping into the real estate market, they're jumping into the rental market. Nothing wrong with that, but that's what's happening. And then these people can't move into this, and these people can't move into this. And then finally, there's these people that need to sell because they are out, their home is vacant, they have left Calgary, and then this is where we start to see the downward pressure on prices. So let's look at some trends. What have we seen? We're going to look at some important trends and then a couple of very startling numbers. The first one is the detached market. This has kind of been this positive story that has been going on for months and months, actually, if not years, during this downward time in Calgary, because the detached market, as long as you're within that mid-range or lower range in price point, so say less than 800K or so, you're not doing too bad. Maybe your benchmark prices have came down slightly, sales are down, and inventory levels are up a little bit, but in comparison to some of the other product types, you are sitting fine. So that has been the ongoing story. However, this month we're seeing some changes there. We're starting to see an increase in inventory and a decrease in sales, more so than we've seen in previous months for detached product. So what does this mean? This means that potentially those people that were out there buying detached product have bought. And potentially those people, like the domino effect again, that may be moving out of condos into the detached product, aren't able to sell their condos for what they need for them in order to move into the detached product. So this domino effect, and again, leading to more consumer confidence, continues to come up. So on the detached side, if you are selling, you do have to be a little bit more aggressive than you had previously thought, very likely. So if you had a market evaluation done, even say 3, 4, 5 months ago, you could be looking at a lower price And in most communities, you would want to be a little bit more aggressive on your marketing, but aggressive on your price point, simply because those rising level of inventory and the lower number of sales means you're just going to be competing with more people. Let's talk about apartments. This, on the other hand, has always been this negative story of decrease prices and increase inventory. Well, this market has just taken a beating over the course of the last few years, as has other markets, but this one seems to be what comes up in the news and in the media quite a bit. So the apartment market is still depressed. Over long-term averages, significantly, very, very slow. However, year over year, we're starting to see a slight, just the slightest little increase you could possibly imagine. So that can mean two things. First off, so year to date, so over the course of 2018 as compared to this time 2017, we're still in the negative. So that's not like we've turned it around. But if we're looking at it September 2018 versus September 2017, slight increase in sales as a percentage and slight decrease in inventory. But this is such a slight number. It's not something that we should think if we're selling a condo that this means that we can overprice. Not at all. It just simply means that potentially this market has just taken such a hit that it's at that point where either sellers are saying, well, this is not making sense, so I'm going to rent it out. Plus, as you know, the rental market isn't doing too bad. So potentially as a seller, you say, look, I'm just not able to sell it for where I see this value to be. Therefore, I'm going to remove it from the market, rent it out. So what does that cause? It causes the rental market a little bit of an improvement, right? Because you're mopping up some of that rental inventory. Real estate market, you're causing a little bit of a decrease. However, your inventory level is decreasing when that happens, right? Because these condos are coming off the market, going into the rental market, so decrease in inventory. So if your sales stay the same, but people are renting out their condos, it's not necessarily a good thing for the real estate market. However, because these people are renting them out, your inventory levels are decreasing. So when you're looking at it on a ratio basis, you're starting to get into a different territory. Really interesting statistic. The next one is attached product. An attached product can be broken down into row properties, so your townhomes or semi-detached, or what else can be called as, say, a duplex or somebody who shares one wall. Now, we want to specifically talk about semi-detached. Yes, row properties are impacted. They're seeing a similar sort of trend to detached right now. So they continue downward. Detached, of course, as we know, was kind of hanging on there, and now it's decreasing. Row is decreasing with it somewhat, if you think of it that way. Apartment's kind of doing its own thing here. It's already a little bit lower, and it's trying to figure out where it's going. So that's where the row product is. No real changes over the course of the last few months. It just continues downward. Not that it's great news, but it just is what it is. Semi-detached, let's talk about that. So we talked about this a little bit last month as we started to see these statistics come out. And if you look at the semi-detached market and you were to remove everything outside of what is in the city center of Calgary, city center being just generally McKnight to Glenmore, Sarcee or so to Deerfoot. It's not exactly correct, but right within that realm, which is what we typically call Calgary's inner city. So if you take that out of the equation, let's just remove semi-detached from there. And what do we have for semi-detached in there? Infill properties. So let's take these infill properties and let's remove them. And now let's look at the semi-detached market. Pretty well the same as anything else. Not really too much difference between the semi-detached market and, again, the row market and the direction of the detached market. So they're all kind of on this trend, right? Now let's take into consideration simply the city center area. So Calgary's inner city, predominantly infill market. There are over 14 months of inventory for this product type within Calgary city center. This is astronomically high, and this trend has continued upward. And it's relatively new, so there's still the sales. There's still the sales. The sales haven't changed too much, really. They really haven't, but the inventory has risen so high, and it's been continuously rising. And as it's been rising like this, we haven't thought too much of it because the sales are just continuing and it's just kind of rising. But over the last few months, we've seen these huge jumps. So if you had a market evaluation done in early September or August, potentially on your infill, your number might be extremely different from what it could be today. based on purely number of sales. Now, if you're a seller and you're looking at your market evaluation at that point in time, you could be thinking, okay, well, these all sold for this price, these all sold for this price. But if you do an updated one, you might still see those same properties simply because there hasn't been any sales. So when you're going through month over month of this, of course, you don't feel it too much as a seller off the start because you're still looking at your comparables. You're still looking at your comparables that are 3, 4, maybe even 6 months old. You're still looking at those comparables. But as we start to move forward, if this inventory level continues to rise and sales continue at their pace, which we don't expect sales to increase to mop up any of that inventory, very, very low chance of that, then what you're going to have is you're going to have this extreme number of infill properties and very few buyers, to the point of 14, 15, if you start to reach up to like 16, 18 months of inventory, then you really don't have too much of a shot at selling unless you are aggressively priced beyond where you even could imagine in a lot of ways, because there's just so few sales and you're competing with so much product. So this market is a pretty big concern as we're starting to move into the winter months. There's just not the buyers out there for the infill properties as we have seen in previous years. Take us back to 2013, 14, 15. Man, we saw a lot of people buying up this brand new infill type product in Calgary, and builders were doing great too. They were knocking down bungalows and building semi-detached product in such communities as Killarney and Altadore and all throughout, getting up into the northwest areas, the Mount Pleasants and those areas too. So this product's out there. Builders are still putting their product on the market. Sellers are putting their property on the market. And the semi-detached market is in a very interesting point because the sellers haven't truly felt it yet. If you're selling your infill, maybe you haven't seen too many showings. If any, you've just been very quiet. That's a product of what is going to happen in the future. So if you do have an infill to sell, you better get very competitive with it in order to compete. Now, if you're buying an infill, what do? Do you think, okay, if I'm buying an infill, then we should really jump on it right now? Potentially, or you might want to wait until this is really felt and until we really see what's happening here and then make a move after that. So very interesting month. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the Calgary real estate market. We're always happy to help. Thanks again.